go shoot a bow right now at the sportsman thingy majiggy somewhere. I don't exactly know.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and that's how today's show starts. The Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show happened last weekend. We think it's the oldest continuously running sportsman show in America. It happens every year for 78 years. If you know of an older one, please keep it to yourself. I attended as usual, and I'm going to see how much of it I can pack into 1 hour. So hang on tight. I'll be running through the entire athletic complex at the University of Maine, from field house to the gym, to the pool, to the classrooms, guns, bows, dogs, owls, sporting camps, all coming up. I'll snap off bits and pieces and serve them up right here. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. First stop, let's run over to the Maine Bowhunters Association shooting range. We're now in the back of the field house where I have just met up with Owen.
Okay, I'm good. I want to do it. I'll win. I'll win.
Do you have any?
No, I'll go.
You'll go?
I am Owen Ratter. I am going to go shoot a bow right now at the sportsman thingy majiggy somewhere. I don't exactly know, but next time or whenever they have bows and pellet guns. So come, okay?
Now, can you shoot a bow? Have you done it?
Yes, I have done it 2 times before. This is my first time, though, like here at this place.
Yeah, let's see how you do.
I've shot a bow here.
Did you shoot right-handed or left-handed this morning?
The archery range is, I'm guessing, about 20 feet long. There are deer targets hanging on the back drape. There's room for 2 shooters. Each shooter gets 4 arrows. Not a lot of power. Enough to stick, maybe, but probably not enough to break an egg.
Ooh, all right.
Right in the ear.
Long eyes and aim with, you know that.
Now, when you...
Yeah, nice shot.
First shot right on the head next to the ear. That's not what you want to hit. 2 things. Owen needs to understand how to use the sight better, and haven't we all done this? The bowstring raked his arm. 1 shot and he's already got a raspberry, but that does not slow him down to the slightest.
Make sure you're looking with your right eye, okay? There you go. Ooh.
Yes. Hit him.
That's a kind of shot.
Yeah.
Second shot missed. Third shot, well, yeah, he hit him. But that deer's going to walk with a limp. Ankle shots aren't very effective. In fact, Owen got his arm with the bowstring again.
Yep. All right. Good job. Good job, bud. Thank you. Ouch.
You all right?
Yep.
That's why they wear those things.
That's why you gotta...
Sighting off.
From the archery range, it's just a quick run over to the air gun range. Connor is just about to try his skill. Connor is 8 years old. Now, you need to be tall enough to get your elbows above the table. Connor just barely makes it. But a few instructions, some safety glasses, and here we go.
Well, let's see. Why don't you go ahead and get that rifle up to your shoulder and let me see if you can shoot and support it all on your own. Okay, are you looking down those sights? Don't put your head back. Put it down right here on the, move your cheek forward a little bit. Nice. You're a natural. There you go. Looking good. Alrighty. Whoop, where'd that one go? There you go.
Just 1 miss so far. This range is also about 20 feet long. There's room for 2 shooters, and each one has a set of 6 targets.
1 more. Nice. 11 for 12. Good shooting.
Good job, Connor.
Yeah.
Get your towel out.
Very good.
The Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show is 1 part exhibit and 1 part reunion. Many people who are involved in the outdoors come to the show every year, either standing behind a booth or walking in front of them. I can't walk anywhere without bumping into people I know. I was at the show for 5 hours last Saturday before I even made it to the last aisle of booths. One of my stops was at the Atlantic Salmon Federation, where Mandy Pelletier was standing behind a tank of salmon eggs on display. I'd just seen her 1 week before, when we were chatting about some school projects they're doing, and will likely do a show on that later this spring. But I put the challenge to Mandy, What would people learn out of such a show?
So, if you did a program about the Maine Council of the Atlantic Salmon Federation and asked them about their Fish Friends program, they would tell you about how they put tanks all over the state in over 50 classrooms and how they teach kids about the life cycle of the salmon. They place eyed eggs in tanks all over the state, and the kids get to go on the funnest field trip of their life and release them. It's very fun, and I love it.
Now, I was told, is this true, that our salmon don't necessarily go upstream and spawn and die? The Western salmon do.
No, they come back year after year, we hope. It's usually an every other year thing, so it's a little tiring. It really is, and it takes a lot out of the fish, so they have to go and have a year off. They go on vacation at sea, and then they come back and they say, let's do this again.
Do you have any idea how far they go out to sea, where they go when they leave Maine?
There's not as much known about what
Bahamas?
I'd like to think that they do. I hope they stay away from commercial fishing nets and get big and fat and strong and healthy and come back and don't eat any plastic or anything yucky.
Well, good. Before the end of the school year, we're going to do it.
Yeah, that would be fun. You should come to a release day event.
When is that?
They have release days in late April and early May. So after the kids are back from April vacation, we'll gauge how the development is going and go ahead and release fish.
It's time for me to run to another place again. Tom Brown is about to do a slideshow on Maine sporting camps in Classroom A. Now, I love sporting camps. In fact, I practically grew up in one. Although it wasn't strictly a sporting camp, it was really just housekeeping rental cabins used by a lot of fishermen. But I know what it was like to give up every spring to cabin repairs, constant painting, leaf raking, and every Saturday morning of my summer youth cleaning cabins before the next group arrived. Sporting camps, when Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine continues on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. I'm doing a whirlwind tour of last weekend's Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show. It's so whirlwind that I'm going to take a 55-minute slideshow on sporting camps and squeeze it into a single segment of this show. Really, it's not that hard. Once you take the slides out of a slideshow, there's not much left. Tom Brown owns Grace Pond Camp out of the Jackman area. He's known that life for 30 years, and some of his slides are older than that. We'll just hit the highlights of his classroom presentation.
Okay, we're going to be traveling to all of these places before the show is over, and we're going to start out to the very far north in Aroostook County. We're going to go to Red River Camps. This is up in the so-called Dabooley area, and Red River Camps has a booth out here at the show today. The big building down on the water has since burned down, and they built a new lodge there. Red River Camps is housekeeping as well as American Plan. And I'll use these terms, housekeeping being a kitchen in your cabin and you supply your own food and meals. American Plan is a dining room, and the lodge provides 3 meals a day. And Red River Camps has both. And that's the old lodge, which is not there anymore. But they built a new one right on the same site. Okay, what I was going to include in the show is all of the things you might be exposed to or could experience at a Maine sporting camp. And this, of course, is a Maine black bear. About the only animal in the Maine woods that poses any threat, and 99% of the time they are long gone because they can smell you long before you can see them. But if there's a cub involved, you could get yourself in some hot water. Okay, Maine moose hunt. You're all probably pretty familiar with that. There's various zones all across the state, and each year there are different periods that the moose hunt is open depending on what zone you're in Maine. This is Eagle Lake, Maine. And the camps we're looking at used to be camps of Arcadia. They are now Fish River Lake camps. They've changed their name. So that is no longer the name they go by. They are American Plan as well as housekeeping. And up in this area in Fort Kent, each winter they have professional dog sled racing. Ice fishing. A lot of Maine sporting camps in the north are open throughout the winter for snowmobiling and ice fishing. Now those are back in the good old days in March when there used to be snow and ice. You could sit on the ice in your t-shirt. Okay, we're dropping a little bit to the south, below the Duchesne area. Moose Point Camps on Fish River Lake, Maine. And Moose Point Camps are an American plan style set of sporting camps. Career politician John Martin is one of the owners of Moose Point Camps. Okay, now we're just a little bit north of the Baxter State Park area at Libby Camps on Millinocket Lake. Here's a picture of the cabins. Libby Camps are American plan style. One thing to keep in mind about almost all of these camps is they're located on a body of water. But the amount of water there is in Maine, the fishing opportunities within 20 miles of any of these camps are just tremendous. Take your canoe and go out exploring, and the camps have a lot more to offer than just the lake that sits outside the front door. And Matt Libby will fly sports around to various fishing spots in the area. Four-wheeling. Of course, there's a myriad of logging roads around all of these camps. Some of them are open to four-wheel traffic, some are not. There's brochures you can pick up to let you know where you can travel and where you can't. But it's turned into a huge sport in Maine, rivaled only by snowmobiling. In the summertime, you'll see these caravans, 10 and 12 machines at a time. Wintertime activity, cross-country skiing. A lot of these camps have a system of trails marked out that you can ski from right from your front door. All right, now we're going to go over to the west of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway to Chemquassabamticook Lake or Ross Lake. These are a very remote set of sporting camps. Now you were just there, Cliff. Will they feed you, or is it all housekeeping?
Well, I've never been to those camps.
You were at a different set of camps. Yeah, okay. I know at one point they had a dining room, so I'll say it is both American plan and housekeeping camps. And Ross Lake Camps is open in the wintertime for snowmobiling and ice fishing. All right, next place is southwest corner of Baxter Park. And one of the sets of camps in Baxter Park are Kidney Pond camps. There's a set of camps on Dacey Pond also. These are a very economical set of sporting camps. They're kind of bare bones. You bring your own food. You have to bring your own cook stove. The cabins have a wood stove and beds and a gas light. And that's about it. But again, they're very economical. I won't quote a price because the price can change from year to year. And these camps have been there since before the turn of the century. And as I said, you've got to bring your own. You can cook over an open fireplace, or you could bring your own stove to cook from. There are no cook stoves in the cabins. And Kidney Pond, right out in front of the cabins, is fly fishing only for brook trout. And there are canoes that have been carried in by the Baxter Park staff and left at a lot of the remote ponds around Kidney Pond and Dacey Pond. And it used to be a few dollars a day, and you can rent one of the canoes and hike in, and the canoe is already at the pond. You hike in with a couple of paddles and your flotation device, fishing gear, and you can have the pond for the day, and the canoe's already been carried in for you. And now we're going to go a little bit southwest of Moosehead Lake and talk about a set of camps. There's Moosehead Lake in Greenville from the air. And just off to the southeast is Wilson Pond Camps. Wilson Pond Camps are a housekeeping style of sporting camps. And of course there's a tremendous amount of canoeing activity in Maine, some dead water, some moving water and some fast water, and fly fishing in Maine. Some of these camps are on fly fishing only bodies of water. Others are in the vicinity of fly fishing only bodies of water. There are 200 lakes and ponds in Maine that are designated fly fishing only. Or you can fly fish a general law pond or artificial lure pond. Most of these ponds in Maine, the fish you're seeking is brook trout. A lot of them will be native brook trout. They're not stocked waters. And this is a guy bobcat hunting. It's not something that you can just stumble out in the woods and do. It takes a great deal of knowledge. A bobcat is a very wary animal, and it's not an easy sport. Not all sporting camps are open through the winter, but a lot of them, particularly in the north, are. Okay, now we're going over to the Jackman area, and that's Fish Pond and Spencer Lake. It's about 15 miles south of Jackman on the Spencer Lake Road. And these cabins are no longer open, but I've left them in the show because they're kind of an interesting situation. A gentleman named John Malone, who's easily one of the 100 most wealthy people in the country, bought the entire township, 26,000 acres, and he has his own set of camps on Spencer Lake. And Hardscrabble were a set of camps that were just recently renovated, and they're basically empty and sitting there now. I wish I had that kind of money. It was initially bought back in the 80s by a log cabin building company from Bangor. And they went through and just renovated the entire place, and they're basically not in use now. This is down on Enchanted Lake. Not quite as far in as the camps we were talking about at Hardscrabble Lodge on Spencer Lake. But these are bulldog camps. There's one of the cabins. Bulldog camps are housekeeping and American plan. Oh, and in this same area, and we discussed it a little bit at the beginning of the show, Grace Pond Camps, which I'm affiliated with. There's one of the cabins at Grace Pond Camps. Grace Pond is 160 acres, 40 feet deep. Native brook trout and smelt are the only species of fish in the pond. It is fly fishing only. We're about a quarter mile down a gated road to access the cabins. These camps are housekeeping. There's kitchens. You bring your own food, cook your own meals. And anybody that has an interest in Grace Pond, I've got some flyers here on the table.
We'll leave it right there, giving Tom Brown the last word in his own set of sporting camps, Grace Pond Camps near Jackman. A lot of sporting camps got started as logging camps in the late 1880s. It's a part of our history that is becoming history. We used to have about 300. We've now got only about 3 dozen. Up next, a perennial crowd pleaser, Grayson Richmond brings over some of his owls from Birdsacre and Ellsworth. I'm too late to get a front row seat, or even a seat. I'm at last weekend's Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8. This weekend show comes from last weekend, the Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show. I spent a day running all over the athletic complex in Orono, trying to grab as much of the show as possible. This morning, I'm just boiling it down like sap to syrup. One of the biggest events every year is the owls brought over by Grayson Richmond from Birdsacre in Ellsworth. The show lasted nearly an hour, but I'm going to try to boil it down into the most fascinating tidbits about these nocturnal predators.
I'm from Birdsacre, and Birdsacre is located down in Ellsworth. Owls are one of the things that people love. Just the name owl evokes something very soft and cuddly, and we just like it without even thinking about it. Eagle, hawk, These are very magnificent birds. But there's something about an owl that just draws your attention and imagination. Throughout time, we've always been sort of entranced by the owl. The Egyptians worshipped the owl. They used the owl as a hieroglyphic. When they would bury their dead, they would take them into the caves before they built pyramids. And if you bring your dead into the cave, which is naturally cool, it's a wonderful habitat for something hiding from the heat, they'd bring the dead in and out would fly an owl. So they naturally assumed that when you bring your dead in, the soul departs from there by the form of an owl. The Inuits also used to believe that an owl would ferry your soul across the river of Styx. And the Greeks, the Mayans used to adore in their temples with owls. One of the great horned owls down in Mexico, the Aztecs would call him the Apuk, the moan bird, the god of war, the god of death. And so we've always been enraptured by owls.
At this point, Grayson is reaching into a wooden box and pulling out an owl. This one is a barred owl, a very common owl in Maine. In fact, I got one over my house that just started hooting for a mate about a week ago.
There we go. How are you doing? Would you like to come out? Would you like to come out? Come on. There we go. Well, where am I now? The little box is like a transporter. I wake up in my enclosure at home, and suddenly I find myself in a totally different place. Now, this is Athena. She's a barred owl, and she's a very old owl. We've had her for probably almost 20 years now. When barred owls are born in the springtime, they grow up very quickly. They have one summer to grow up, and they're mature. They're born in the spring. They take about 30 days to incubate within the egg. After about 4 weeks of hatching, they will leave the nest, but they can't fly. Now, the bird is no longer needs a nest, but he's still being fed in the tree around the nest area. If he falls out of the nest, this isn't a problem because he can walk. It's amazing how small an owl can be. And the biggest part on the owl, even when it's a baby, are its feet. It has huge talons. It's like these giant nails coming out of your socks. And those talons are there even as a baby to help defend it. If something comes to it while the parents are off feeding and trying to bring food back to the baby can scare off prey just by looking at it, by being intimidating. It will lower its head down to the middle of its body, and it will fan out its wings. And the feathers on the back will go up, and it forms this giant sun with a head down in the middle, and it is very imposing. We call it a sun disk. So the baby can scare off predators just by looking at it. Barred owls have dark eyes. Most owls have yellow eyes and a dark beak. The barred owl has dark eyes and a yellow beak, the reverse. And so when you look at a barred owl, you can tell the age of them by the beak. If he has a yellow beak, he's immature. The sun will bleach out that beak and turn it white over time. And this owl is so old that that white beak is almost pure ivory. It looks just so clear and translucent. So when you look at the barred owl, the easiest distinguishing trait is the bars that run along its back. There are white bars and black bars. Every feather on his body has a bar on it. There are 5 concentric rings which go around his eyes, forming the facial disc. Now, most birds want to disappear. They don't want to be noticed. You look at a cedar waxwing, and he has a black band running across his eye to hide the eye globe, so you're not aware that he's there. Owls are in reverse. While their feathers are camouflage, that facial disc that runs around their eyes, like a giant satellite, makes their eyes accentuated. And their eyes are actually a lot larger than most birds and people. So that when they look at you, they are very intimidating. They seem to stare into your soul and know exactly what you're thinking. But when you look at them, you have no idea what they're thinking. His ears are asymmetrical. He doesn't have monkey ears like we do. His ears, one is higher than the other, and one will be lower so that he can triangulate sound. Now we hear and determine where something is by the time that sound takes to get from one ear to the other, so you know if it's coming from the left or the right. He can hear something and know if it's going up or down and exactly where it is, so that when he hears one sound, he knows where the sound came from, even in total darkness. When he hears a mouse running across the room, he can distinguish the mouse from a chipmunk, from a flying squirrel, from a rabbit. He knows exactly what it is, how fast it's going to move, and he can figure out where it's going to be as he leaves his perch. One sound, he hears it, he locates it. The next sound, he's off and flying down to get it. He distinguishes this also from the sound of leaves rustling or twigs moving around. all the sounds out there, and he knows exactly what is moving and how fast he needs to go down to get it. We used to love owls because as agrarians, having farmland, they took care of the mice population. Since we don't farm as much, we don't have the same sort of interest, but they still are very interesting to us, and they do a very good job by keeping the rodent population down. We don't need the poison if the owl's doing its job. He should take 3, 4, 5 mice. He could take maybe 3,000 mice a year, and that's not counting your birds. They do like to have birds, but they like to have easy meals. A bird is a hard thing to catch. Now, they may wait for the bird to be coming back to its roost at nighttime, so as the owl's waking up and that bird is going back to go to sleep for the night, the owl may try to catch him. Otherwise, it's very difficult because the bird can move very fast. In fact, if you want to find an owl, you just look for a chickadee or a crow. The chickadees will gather around him in groups and they'll start chickadeeing him. Chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee! And they mark his territory. If this owl is in a tree, they chickadee around him to let all the other chickadees know that this owl is here, he's a danger. We had a piece of plastic on top of one of the enclosures to keep water out. And the crows came down to the great horned owl and they started cawing at him, mobbing him. There's an owl in here. Now the crows are supposed to be a little smarter than this. But when we took that plastic off to allow the rain to come back down on them in the summertime, the crows came back and they said, "Oh my God, there's an owl in here." And they had to do the same thing, mob him again, and he just sat there listening to the crows, and the sound is awful for them, so that when you hear a crow, he's driving the owl away from their territory. A crow's not bad, he just wants to have a good night's sleep, and you can't get one with an owl around. And worse, the owl just might take his nest and have babies in it. Now that's really adding insult. Now, I'm going to let this barred owl go back into the box because he's been so good. The solid owl, which this little guy is, came to us many years ago and he lost an eye. We're not sure how he lost the eye, but the eye is problematic because you can close one eye and you can walk around very easily and have no trouble. This guy can fly around. But with one eye closed, when you lose one eye, going down, your depth perception is off. You're not sure quite where the next step is. Try walking down the stairs when you take a step and you're off just a little bit. So when he comes out of his tree to go down and get his mouse, he's not quite sure when to stop. If he stops too soon, he loses his mouse. If he waits too long, he could break his legs. The legs are very fragile. Now the solid owl is only 8 inches tall. He'll go after mice. He can take a whole mouse. He can eat about 4 times his own body weight. He can go after a flying squirrel, an ordinary rat, birds. He'll even go after slightly bigger owls. He has a cousin called the boreal owl. And the boreal owl looks just like the solid, but it's just a little bit bigger. And when they fight over a nest cavity, it's vicious. He fights to the death, and he'll rip that little guy apart so he can get a nice prize breeding ground. These guys are migratory. The females, they may set up all year and stay in one spot, but if it gets cold, it might just be easier to get out of town. So the females, and typically the juveniles, will be smart enough to leave, and they'll go down south to follow the insect population. He loves insects. The males are not so smart, or they're determined. If they find a good nest cavity where they could have a baby next year, they sit in that little hole all winter long, freezing, waiting for love. And then in the springtime, the girls may come back, and the boy announces that he's ready to have a nest. But by being migratory, they're not mated for life. So you got to watch out for the cute ones. He'll steal your heart, and then next year he'll find somebody else. If there's a lot of food out there, he may have 2 nests, but usually the second wife does not as good as the first. And he is trying to feed, maybe 2, 3, 4 eggs. The babies grow very quickly. It takes about 29 days for them to hatch. Then it takes about 18 days for them to self-regulate their own heat, and the mother can finally go off and take a bath. She flies to a stream and bathes and comes back to the nest. They're going to hang around for another 30 days. They'll be a little flightless, but as they start to develop their feathers and can fly, they start to change their patterning of the feathers. When they're born, they have a nice orange belly, chocolate head, and as they grow, within a matter of a few months, they're going to change and molt and have an adult plumage. And there's a little trouble here. As soon as they start to drop those baby feathers and grow adult ones, there's a chemical response that's triggered in the parents. When they look at their baby and the babies aren't cute anymore, they stop bringing food to the baby. So if you want to stay at home and you don't want your parents to ask you to get a job and go to college, you want to stay as cute as possible, as long as possible.
That never worked for me. I was cute, but my parents still kicked me out anyway. We'll cut it off right there. Grayson Richmond of Birdsacre in Ellsworth has been show and telling us about owls, including a barred owl and a saw-whet owl that he brought with him. Up next, Chandler Woodcock speaks. He's the Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and he'll give a quick overview of what IFNW has been dealing with lately. Right behind him, David Trahan, Executive Director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine was at the Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show last weekend, so you could get little tidbits this weekend on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm at last weekend's Eastern Maine Sportsman Show. I never miss it, and neither does Chandler Woodcock. Chandler is the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Every year, he's invited to give some remarks and an overview of how things are going in the state. He spoke for half an hour. I'm going to just hit the highlights and give you 5 minutes.
I want to begin with a thank you to everybody for all of the kind words that you've expressed to the department. We get plenty of criticism, obviously, and some of it's extremely pertinent. But I also want to thank you for the kind words we receive, because we receive a lot of those. We recently hired a firm, a national firm, to do a comprehensive survey of the people of the state and their attitudes towards outdoor-related activities. And the feedback from the department was that a very high percentage of people in Maine were pleased at what we were doing in one way or another. And that includes the Warden Service that had a positive rating of over 90%, and the bios had a positive rating over 90% too. So people seem to be contented. They did express some concerns in specific areas, but overall we were very pleased with the results of that. And it will help us in the future in some more aggressive marketing, I hope, too. We have a couple of things going on in the department that are very public related. One of them is the species management plan for all of the species that we manage, including fisheries and wildlife. And it's a public process where you're able to comment online, www.mainefishwildlife.com. Go to that and find the site and make a public comment during the species process. You can attend the meetings, email, all good. So it's your opportunity to make comments on particular species or in general if you'd like. I want to alert you to some changes in our online licensing system, upcoming. And I think these will be great for everybody. The online system in the future, very near future, will have the ability to have more than one license purchased with one purchase, which has been a while in its transition. It's a system that takes a while to change, unfortunately, but we've been working on this for quite a while. So if you want to purchase multiple licenses with one payment, you're going to be able to do that in the very near future. You're also going to be able to reduce the steps it will take to get you your license physically. And I think equally as importantly, and coming into this century, it will be mobile app friendly. We have engaged in a federally funded shooting range project through the Pittman-Robinson funding, excise tax you pay on ammunition and guns. We have applied for and received a fairly substantial grant from the federal government about a year and a half ago, and have improved and received and approved shooting range improvements around the state. And we're continuing to do that. I think it's been a great project. Some of the local shooting ranges have expanded, added to their facility, created new range opportunities, made it safer, increased the berm height, all sorts of things have been happening. So the range projects are full bore right now. We just had a brand new series of apps coming in, so we'll be talking about those in the department and giving the local range opportunity to get some money in the near future. I'll talk about moose permits for a second. We reduced the permits by 600 this year. The majority of those were in Zone 4. 350 cows reduced in Zone 4, and some other cows in 1, 2, and 3 were reduced. The vast majority of the reduction came in the cow arena in November. We've also proposed that November week be moved to the last week of October. Beginning the Monday prior to resident deer hunting day and ending resident deer hunting day. So the one overlap day for moose hunters and deer hunters will be the Saturday, and that will be it. That's the proposal. We haven't done it yet because it's still in the process, but that is part of what we propose for this year. Total for this year will be around 2,150, roughly. I could be off a few, but 2,150 permits will be given out in June, coming right up. And the drawing, which will be held at the Kittery Trading Post in Kittery. I want to talk about Northwoods Lodge just for a second, if we could. Gordon Show will be in its last season coming up this summer. And people have been expressing their disappointment that we're going into the last year. I'm the person who made the decision, and I'm standing by it very comfortably. It's a reality show. Reality shows come and go on television. Some of them, if you're familiar with the show Survivor, look like they should have left TV several years ago. So the Colonel and I had a good discussion about the departure of the show, because it's still the #1 show on the animal planet, and a very popular show. I want the show to leave in that position. I do not want the show to be headed downhill when it goes out, particularly since it's a law enforcement show. I don't want any tinkering with the law enforcement arena just to keep it popular. That's not what that show's about. So I made the decision about a year ago, a little over a year, that this would be the last taping season and the last showing of it coming up. And I will tell you, we get to preview every show that's produced. Every show we preview. The show is going out in style this year with a nice portrayal of the Warden Service and of Maine.
That's Chandler Woodcock, Maine IFNW Commissioner. David Trahan is Executive Director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, and they're doing some pretty new things too.
My name is David Trahan. I'm the Executive Director of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. For you that don't know who the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine is, we're a 10,000 member organization. We have a 6,000 square foot facility in Augusta. We've been in existence since the mid-'70s. We were created to protect both hunting and gun rights for sportsmen. This last year, we've been going through some major transformations. We're turning our facility into a youth education center. We spent about $120,000 building 7 youth ranges, archery, airsoft pellet, and computerized ranges. And beginning in June, we're going to start holding hunter safety classes and other types of youth programs at our facility. The other things that we do, we monitor all the legislation at the State House that affects sportsmen, fishing, trapping, and hunting. And depending on what those pieces of legislation do, we will often lobby either for or against legislation. Some of the things that we followed in the last session, of course, there's a background check initiative that's coming next November. We'll be involved in that. We partner with 42 fishing game clubs around the state, everywhere from the PCCA that sponsors this all the way down into the southern part of the state. We have a bill in this legislative session. Some of the clubs that have ranges down in the southern part of the state have been having many problems with their neighbors trying to shut them down. So we have some legislation in that would grandfather shooting ranges and protect them from frivolous lawsuits. It's one of the things that we're working on this session. In the last couple of years, the other thing that we've done as an organization is we've got into the land conservation business quite aggressively. We've been involved in several projects. For instance, the Cold Stream project in the Forks region to protect about 3,000 acres of deer yard, 8,000 acres altogether, and about 30 miles of trout spawning habitat. We were a major player in putting that project together and protecting that land. We still have public access, but one of the areas that we particularly want to protect is deer wintering areas in some of the parts of the state where deer are in trouble. So that's just basically some of the things that we do. We're seen as one of the most powerful lobbying groups in the state, and that comes from many years of having sportsmen and women coming to the state and coming to the legislature. We have the House Chair of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife sitting here, and I think he can vouch for the fact that we're up there all the time advocating for your interests. One last thing, we did partner with Becoming an Outdoor Woman program this year, and we're initiating several programs for young women and adult women to get introduced to the outdoors and and participate in the things that we all care about.
That's David Trahan of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine speaking at last weekend's Eastern Maine Sportsmen Show. Up next, my annual failure. Every year, the real stars are the dogs. Hunting dogs and search and rescue dogs. It's one of the most interesting things to watch and one of the most obscure things to hear. Every time I try to capture it on the radio, I just promise myself to do better next year. Well, last year's next year has come, so I'll try again in a moment. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. The last few minutes of today's show goes to the dogs. The North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association has a chapter right here in Maine. The Sebasticook chapter brings dozens of dogs to the Eastern Maine Sportsman Show every year, and last weekend was no exception. Bird dogs from all over this end of the state go to their clinics to learn how to retrieve, find cripples, and point. Well-trained water dogs and upland game bird dogs are all about conservation and the prevention of cruelty. Peter Wade is on the mic, and here are just a few tidbits from the main stage as these versatile dogs were put through their paces.
What you're seeing in front of me right now is a training table. Basically, a training table is school. Okay? When you send your children to school, they sit in front of a desk, and this is where they learn. The teacher teaches them and shows them things. This is how they do it. And we have this. I have 4 of these training tables at my house. I have one outside in the backyard 365 days a year. When I let my dogs out the back door, the first thing they do, they run up and they stand on this because they want to learn something new. They enjoy what they learn on here. Okay? It's not a bad thing. It's not discipline. It is learning. Okay? So, we're going to bring up the first bunch of dogs. Why don't we just start a parade and come right up through? This is a German wide-haired Griffon. Wide-haired pointing Griffon, sorry. A German short-haired pointer. It's Roxy. Okay? Another Griffon. Now, I'll have to preface this. This is not her dog. This is my dog, so you can see how out of control he is. Okay? Good. Thank you, Allie. Next, Joe's a German short-haired pointer. Another German short-haired pointer. Keep coming right up. You'll see a lot of German short-haired pointers. They're kind of in our club, there's a lot of that's where we have a lot of them.
During the course of the hour-long show, I learned a lot. 8-week-old puppies take to this training table right away. It's a place to have fun for them. They like to work because they get treats and love, and it's a bonding exercise. I learned some of the commands. These trainers don't say stop. The command is whoa, and that is universal for stop what you're doing and don't move. That's valuable if a dog is heading toward a road or a porcupine. Over the course of the demonstration, I watched how dogs can be directed in the river. For instance, let's say 2 ducks go down. Which one do you get first? With hand signals, the trainer can direct the dog to go after the one that is most likely to disappear first. You want to see something really impressive? Riley is about 55 pounds. He's been trained to bring back a goose, which can weigh 15 pounds or so. You got to clamp down pretty firmly to drag it back when it's a quarter of your own weight. But that same dog can retrieve an egg without breaking it. Then there is the discipline that dogs must learn, like wanting so badly to eat what's in his mouth.
How about a cracker trick? Anybody do that? Let's try it. Again, some of the stuff that we do it because it's kind of fun, and we're just basically asking our dogs to do a little bit more. Now, you think about it. Dogs are opportunists. Okay, if any of you have dogs, you know that if you leave something just a little too close to the edge of the counter sometimes, it disappears, and you have no idea where it disappeared. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to ask these dogs. Okay, hold on to your crackers. Don't use them yet. Okay, what I want you to do, ask your dog to hold it, and then I want you to walk away from them. See if we can do this. Okay, we got 1 down. We got 2 down, 3 down. Okay, they're dropping like flies. Okay, we still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 8 still in the running. Now, if you look at Riley here, we have to call maintenance in because she has a little pool of drool at the bottom. Okay? Now, this is asking a dog to do a lot, to sit there and have food and just sit there going, come on, are you kidding me? Okay? But it's the same idea. You send your dog for a long retrieve across the pond or out of your sight. You want to know that dog's not going to eat it. Oh, we lost another one. Okay, good job. Why don't you go ahead and take him away and give your dog a treat. Give him a hand.
I've got to hand it to the dogs. 8 dogs lined up, each with a cracker in his mouth and none chomping down until told it was okay. I would have failed that test the moment I could sniff the biscuit. So, once again this year, I have failed to do justice to the Sebastopol chapter of the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. It's always a highlight of the Eastern Maine Sportsman Show, and it's a lowlight of trying to record good stuff in a cavernous room with lots of moving people and dogs and a PA system that doesn't like me. Oh well, I'll bet I can do better next year. There are some other parts of the Sportsman Show that I'll want to include on this show sometime very soon. Specifically, some tips that can keep you and your kids alive. Those will be on the air shortly. Meanwhile, this show and all previous shows are archived in the web at 929theticket.com. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine returns next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8. It's brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS on Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.